hunt is over. The field is set in the East.
The Bulls are certainly back because of Rose. Their best season since '98.
Bulls good enough to win a title?
I'd say yeah.
This Miami team at times is scary. They're so good, yet other times they've lost some games and you wonder what's happened.
This is a team that's going to have to find the right answers before the curtains open up and playoff basketball comes.
This kid is an X factor for the playoffs.
And the Sixers have themselves their first winning season since 2004-05. Not bad for a team that started 3-13.
See, all they talk about here is offense. They never talk about their inability to defend as a team at the opposite end.
Frank Vogel said this is a playoff team. We will make the playoffs.
Brandon, get your playoff tickets. It's going to be fun.
Hello again, basketball fans. This is the Eastern Conference Playoff Preview Show on NBA TV. Rick Kamla with a couple of playoff bets. Dennis Scott and Greg Anthony, 147 combined playoff games, 152 combined playoff threes. And these gentlemen went back-to-back to the NBA Finals in 94 with the Knicks, Greg Anthony, 95 with the Magic, Dennis Scott. How y'all doing? You ready for the start of the playoffs?
Oh, man, I can't wait. Wait a minute. You're telling our age a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bittersweet for me, too. Losing a seventh game in the championship, difficult, but we were the Eastern Conference champs, so that is a positive.
At least he was bittersweet. They brought the broom out on us.
Houston toyed with you guys. But here's the deal. We're talking about the Eastern Conference, and we're pumped up about the Eastern Conference playoffs. Let's show you the lay of the land right now. The 1-8, Chicago against Indiana. We'll talk more about this in just a second. That series begins Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. The 4-5 is the Orlando Magic against the Atlanta Hawks. That series begins Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. The 3-6, the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks. A storied rivalry. It resumes playoff style Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern on TNT. The 2-7 is the Miami Heat against the Philadelphia 76ers. That series begins Saturday, 3:30 on ABC. And if you close your eyes and you think about the Chicago Bulls and the Indiana Pacers, you go back to the mid-'90s when these two guys were balling, and you think Reggie Miller, you think Michael Jordan, you think Scottie Pippen, and it's just one of the great playoff rivalries we've had in the last 20 or so years.
You think also get your sleep, get a lot of rest, because Chase Mine Jordan and Pippen, and, of course, Reggie Miller, one of the best to ever come off screens.
Yeah, you know what? It was also a pretty one-sided affair. And the question is it going to be one-sided this time? You got a 1 versus 8. I'll be interested to see how the young Pacers respond to the pressure.
Well, you have a team with 62 wins against a team with 37 wins. That's quite a gap in there, but for the Bulls, they finished the season rolling. They won their last 9 games. It's the first time that the Bulls finished with the best record in the NBA since 1997-98. They won the title that year. That was the last of their titles in the Jordan, Pippen, and Phil Jackson regime. Derrick Rose, the only player in our beloved NBA in the top 10 in points and assists. And for the Indiana Pacers, yes, they're in the playoffs for the first time since 2006. Despite finishing 8 games below 500, they fired head coach Jim O'Brien after a 17-27 start. Frank Vogel did well as the interim coach, 20-18, got the Indiana Pacers back into the playoffs. And what we want to do right now is hear from Coach Tom Thibodeau about the Indiana Pacers and Danny Granger about who he'd rather face in round 1.
They can put a lot of points up on the board. They're playing with a lot of confidence. And they have a little bit of everything. Collison, Granger, Hibbert's playing well, Hansbrough's playing well. They have a good, solid bench. So we're going to have to be ready.
It's really going to be about stopping Derrick Rose. He's killed us in the past, as he's done almost everybody this year. Fortunately, we honestly would have rather to play Chicago than Boston. Boston with the veteran team, they know how to win in the playoffs. So with Chicago, we think we have a shot. So it should be a good series. Now it's the next step. It's just we got to go. Is a lot of times, I've only experienced it my first year. We have guys like Mike that's never been there, and I don't think the only other people that's been in the playoffs on our team is Jeff Austin, James Posey. So we got to make a statement.
All right, well, first of all, I appreciate the honesty of Danny Granger. I love it when players and coaches speak their mind and let it flow. That said, Danny Granger said, I'm going to clip this one off. Greg, I'm going to start with you. He said, quote, we think we have a shot against Chicago, and I'm paraphrasing there. Do you think they have a shot against Chicago, and do you like Danny Granger saying that?
You know what? I don't think they have a shot, but I have no problem with him saying that. One of the most important attributes you have as a competitor is confidence. And if you're Frank Vogel, you want your guys to believe that they can go into this series and have success. Because if you doubt yourself, why would anybody else believe you have a chance to compete? So I don't really have a problem with it. And let's face it, it's not like they were great against Boston either.
Yeah.
So they had struggled against both of these teams. That's one reason why they only won 37 games and are an 8th seed.
I'm not mad at the comment. I just don't want you to do it on national television, knowing that you're going to give the Chicago Bulls more ammunition. And we talk about bulletin board conversation. I'm sure the Bulls have seen that and talked about it. They're going to be ready to play.
Hey, you got to be careful what you wish for in life and in basketball. And we downshift right now talking about a pair of rookie head coaches. Tom Thibodeau, he's been an assistant for a million years, but this is his first run as a head coach. And obviously Frank Vogel came out of nowhere to take over the Indiana Pacers. How do you see the coaching matchup shaking out?
Well, I think right now you give the nod to Tibbs because he's been around and being around Doc Rivers, being around Jeff Van Gundy in Houston. So he's been around some elite coaches, and he's taken all that information over the last 20 years, and he's applying it now. And, of course, having a guy like Derrick Rose to lead what you want to get done every night helps your cause. With that being said, I still like, through all the adversity that Tibbs has faced this year with all the injuries, to have the best record with NBA, I think is just totally awesome.
You know what? The other thing you want to focus is on, I've always felt the regular season is really more about how players perform. The postseason is more about how well coaches perform, their ability to make adjustments from game to game, and that's where I think Tom Thibodeau has an advantage, having won a world championship. Also, philosophically, his team is built defense first, the exact opposite of how the Pacers have performed. They're more offensive-oriented, offensive-minded, and they have been downright offensively against Chicago, only averaging about 90 points in their 4 matchups this season.
And you saw the number there on Tom Thibodeau, 62 wins as a first-year head coach, tied for the most in the history of the NBA. That's how historic this season has been for the Chicago Bulls, including Derrick Rose, who is the probable MVP. We told you the stat on him with the points and the assists. The question I want to ask you guys, both of you, is, you know, we know he's ready to win MVP, and likelihood he does that, but is he ready to lead the Bulls back to a championship?
I think so. Just like at the beginning of the year, he said, why should not be the MVP? Why can he not lead this team to the promised land? He has the perfect demeanor. He brings it every night. He works on both ends of the floor. And if the game is tight, you put the ball in his hands, and he will make the right decision. And last but not least, he's making his free throws. Early in his career, go back to his college days in the final championship game, he missed his free throws.
Yeah.
Now he's making them at the end of the game, which is crucial.
You know what's interesting about Derrick Rose? There are 3 guys in our league right now who I think physically intimidate you from the position they play. Dwight Howard, LeBron James, and Derrick Rose. He physically intimidates you as a point guard. He is as gifted offensively from a physical standpoint as anybody who's ever played the position, and his skill set is rapidly approaching the very best we've ever seen play that position. Now, his body of work much shorter, but what he is proving night in and night out, that he's not afraid of the moment, and he is ready to accept the challenge to lead the Bulls back to the glory land.
It's going to be fun to watch. Derrick Rose is 22 years old, probably going to win MVP, may win a championship before the age of 23. It boggles the imagination. And hopefully you can not boggle the imagination, but enlighten the people out there, Dennis Scott, with your key matchup to this series.
Well, I think the key matchup is Luol Deng and Danny Granger. I think all year long we've given Derrick Rose so much love, but he has been the X factor, consistent on the defensive end, shooting, 46%, knocking down big shots late in the game. If he can control Danny Granger, then let him have one of those Danny Granger all-star type series, I think the Bulls win easily.
Luol Deng has been one of the unsung heroes in the NBA this year. They do not have an award for that, but and he's a guy that stares down the big bad LeBron James. He's not afraid of that matchup. So Luol Deng is looking at Danny Granger like, okay, I got this. And Greg Anthony, I know you got this. You're X factor for this series.
Yeah, when you look at a series where it's a 1-8 matchup, it's really about whether or not the 8 seed can do enough to make it a series. And I think for Indiana to have a chance in this series, I think their bigs have to be big. And I'm talking about Roy Hibbert and also Tyler Hansbrough in particular. We know Jeff Foster's there as well and McRoberts. But those two have to set the tone. I think you got to attack the strength of the Chicago Bulls. You got to impact the paint. I always tell you, there's a reason why they got 3 seconds down there, because ultimately that's where championships are going to be won. If those guys can perform at a high level and really make Chicago have to make that a primary focal point in terms of how they play, then I think Indiana can make the series interesting. But for me, that's where the Bulls have been dominant on the interior. As great as Derrick Rose is, he is the MVP in my mind, no doubt about it. But what makes them a championship contending team is how dominant that interior presence has been this season.
Yeah, they pound people down low, no question. And let's take a look right here at the series schedule, and you guys can all ascertain for yourselves how long you think it will go. It begins Saturday at 1 on ESPN, continues Monday at 9:30 on TNT, April 21st at 7, it's on NBA TV, April 23rd, Game 4, 2:30 on TNT, and obviously, if necessary, it would go April 26th, April 28th, and April 30th. Time for predictions on the 1-8 in the East, Chicago v. Indiana. Dennis, you first.
Well, I will give Indiana a shot if they can get hot and score 52 points like they did in Denver early in the season, but I got the Bulls sweeping them.
Yeah, there's a reason.
The broom.
Yeah. I think there's a reason why they have TBD down there those last 3 games, because I don't think it's going to be to be determined.
It will not be necessary, will it?
I think it'll go 4 games. I just think this is a nightmare matchup, with all due respect to what Danny Granger said. The lack of experience and the lack of defensive firepower to contain Derrick Rose and that vaunted Chicago Bulls team.
Feels like the toughest game for the Bulls in this series will be Game 3 at Indiana at Conseco Fieldhouse with the playoffs back there. We'll see how it all turns out, and when we come back, we talk about LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, the big three of the Heat. They embark on their first playoff run together. They're going to take on the 76ers. We talk about it next.